Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm your host, Alan Moore, and today I'm excited to have Alex Hopkin, Associate Planner with Gen Y Planning and owner of Simply Paraplanner, on the show today. Alex's husband is in the Air Force, and they were stationed in Japan for 4 years. Through an awesome grant program, she was able to go through the CFP and the AFC education and sit for both exams. They returned to the States, but were stationed in rural Oklahoma, where no financial planning firms were nearby. She came to XYPN 15 and met a couple of financial advisors, one being Sophia Berra, and started working as a virtual paraplanner. She has since become a full-time virtual employee of Gen Y Planning and even meets with clients. She has also started Simply Paraplanner, a job board and soon-to-be resource center for advisors that want to be or want to hire a virtual paraplanner. Alex is an awesome example of what advisors can build for themselves if they have enough perseverance. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/123. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Alex. Hey, Alex, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being on.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm super excited because I have sort of been watching a lot of the work that you've been doing for the last couple of years from afar and just sort of been seeing what's been going on. I'm not sure that you and I have had a chance to connect. I think we may have met at XYPN 15, but I haven't had a chance to connect since then. So I wanted to be able to sort of dig in and learn more about what you're up to. So I guess for listeners' benefit, can you give me sort of a broad overview of just sort of what you do on it? Like, what is your current role in sort of the various things that you're working on?
Sure. So I am a virtual paraplanner. My official title is Associate Planner over at Gen Y Planning with Sophia Berra. So that is really my daytime job. And then on the side, I have started a website called Simply Paraplanner that's been up for about 2 years now, that works as a job board website to help financial planners find virtual paraplanners across the country.
So how many hours a week are you currently working with Sophia at Gen Y Planning?
So I work full-time for Sophia as of April 1st. She brought me on as a full-time employee. And before that, I was a 1099 contractor and worked part-time, so about 20 hours. Okay,
awesome. I want to dig into that because that's a really fascinating transition to go through. So let's take a step back. Sort of what has been your path into financial planning? Has this sort of always been your career, or did you switch into this career later on in life?
Sure. So I studied finance in college, and my then fiance, now husband, received orders to be stationed overseas with the Air Force right around the time I was graduating. So after a very whirlwind marriage and wedding, we moved overseas to Okinawa, Japan, and we were there for a total of 4 years.
Wow, that's what, 2 deployments, I guess.
It was a full accompanied tour, and so it was supposed to be 3 years, but we just loved it so much that we extended for a 4th year.
That's awesome. I hear Japan is one of those. My brother was stationed there, and I either hear like amazing things or like, oh my gosh, what just happened? So it's cool that y'all had a good time and a good time in your life to do it too. Like that's like you said, a bit of a whirlwind, but good timing.
It really was. I think living in a remote location as newlyweds, it really helped create the foundation for our marriage. We really had to rely on each other, make new friends, create a home together, all while living overseas. So it was a really exciting and pretty crazy time in my life.
So were you working when you were over there, or sort of what did that look like for you?
So I looked for work while we were over there. Jobs were pretty limited because it was a small island and it was overseas. So there were some jobs on base. I worked at a credit union for a while, but I really decided that while we were overseas, it would be a good time for me to continue my education and, look further into what I would be doing when I got back to the States. So I received a scholarship to pursue an advanced certificate of my choice. And so that's when I decided to pursue the CFP.
Where did the scholarship come from?
It was a military spouse scholarship. They provide tuition assistance to military spouses, which is just a really incredible opportunity. So I took that and, like I said, pursued the CFP.
That's awesome. I knew at one point they were paying for the AFC, or the Accredited Financial Counselor, through the AFCPE so that you could work with military or service members. I did not know that they had opened that up and were paying for different types of certifications in addition to the AFC.
Yes, so those are two different programs, and I have actually done both.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes. So the first opportunity that I talked about, it's called My CAA, and it really is tuition assistance. It's more of a grant, I would say, for military spouses to pursue a career that would allow them to move and have some flexibility. And so you can use that grant to pursue any sort of, career broadening certificate. So that could be, photography, it could be financial planning, it could be any sort of certificate towards a career that you're looking at.
So why the CFP? I guess what drew you to that one?
Well, I had studied finance, like I said, and I had a friend that was pursuing the CFP at the time, also in Okinawa, Japan. And it really just seemed, like a great fit, something that I would be really interested in. I had worked at the credit union, like I mentioned, and, I really liked finance. I just didn't love working in a credit union, trying to meet credit card quotas and loan application deadlines. And that just wasn't really my cup of tea. So when I realized that there was this whole other side of personal finance that I could explore, I became very interested in that.
So that was one program, and you said it's My CAA, and then there was another program as well.
Yes. So then there is the AFC scholarship that you mentioned. It's called a fellowship. And FINRA sponsors the program, and they pay for 50 military spouses each year to pursue the AFC designation.
Very cool. I love that they have that program. And I think it's twofold, right? One is military spouses tend to get bounced around the world quite a bit. And it can be tough to find, a career that bounces all over with you. But also, service members do have really high bankruptcy rates and financial issues. And I think part of the purpose is to actually have some folks that go through the program actually working with service members, which I think is awesome and a huge value add.
Yes, absolutely. I would completely agree with that.
So I don't think we've had very many people, if any, actually, that have the AFC and the CFP. So for folks that are sort of looking at this career, can you give me sort of your take on the difference and the benefits of sort of AFC versus CFP?
Sure. So the AFC is the Accredited Financial Counselor designation. And that's really what it is. It really focuses on the counseling side of financial planning. And so the coursework and the material that you study, it is a lot more geared towards the delivery of, they're not really recommendations. The AFC is more about financial education and literacy and just providing that groundwork for personal finance, mostly to military members. They're also civilian AFCs as well. So I have found it to be a great complement to the CFP because the CFP doesn't really address how to actually speak with the client and, discuss difficult situations and really those counseling techniques that the AFC does address.
Is it fair to say the AFC focuses more on behavioral modification, whereas the CFP is more academic? Like we'll call it the art versus the science of planning. Is that a fair delineation, do you think?
I would say so. I think the CFP is a lot more technical, whereas the AFC, yes, it deals a lot more with behavioral financial planning, debt management, cash flow, dealing with creditors, those types of topics.
And what does it take to get the AFC? So it's coursework. Is there an exam or an experience requirement?
Yes. So there is a coursework. You receive books in the mail. It's a self-paced study. They do have some webinars as well that you can attend. And then there is a short exam. I can't exactly remember how long it was. I think it was a 2-hour exam or so. And then there is a 1,000-hour experience requirement.
So 6 to 12 months, probably 12 months, because 1,000 hours is a lot to do all at once. So,
yeah.
Okay, very cool. So what did you do? So you got the CFP, you got the AFC. Sort of what were the next steps for you?
So just to be clear, I have passed the CFP exam. I did that back in 2013, but I am still not a CFP professional. I am still working towards my experience requirement.
Got it.
Yeah, so it is a long journey for me. Yeah, so I got back to Okinawa after taking the CFP exam, and we still had about another year left on the island. And so I started volunteering as much as I could to gain any sort of financial planning experience. And so at that time, I worked at a nonprofit called the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society and volunteered most of my time there to provide financial counseling to service members and their families. I also taught financial planning classes on base, really just did whatever I could while we were overseas, hoping that once we got back to the U.S., that I would be able to join a traditional firm and start gaining more hours.
That's awesome. So were you able to work with a firm before you came back to the U.S., or were you able to find anyone to actually do virtual work with?
Unfortunately, no, not at that time. I spent a lot of time, looking online, contacting potential employers, just trying to find anyone that would take a chance on me and let me work virtually instead of actually being in the office. And I had no such luck. And so when we moved back to the US, like I said, I was hoping that we would move near a large city and I would find, a financial planning firm nearby. But we were reassigned to a remote part of Oklahoma, and the closest financial planning firm was over 2 hours away.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Yeah, the beauty of Air Force bases, they did not put them in ideal locations at times.
Yes, and you have no control over it. So my quest for a position in financial planning that was virtual continued. And right around this time, I stumbled across the XYPN network. They popped up as a network of virtual financial planners. And I saw that you guys were going to be having your very first conference in 2015.
So this would have been 2014 when you were so you passed CFP 2013. You said you had a year. So was this like late 14, early 15?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So I did land one job when we got back to Oklahoma. I was working at a virtual call center as a financial counselor.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah, it was a super neat job. It's a company where large firms hired us to add to their benefits packages for their employees so that their employees would have access to financial counseling just as a benefit to working there.
That's so cool. I've not heard of that. So is that still operating or?
Yep. They're still operating. The company itself was called Ask AFS. And like I said, it was such a neat experience. I worked there for a while. It was really cool, a bit nerve-wracking in the beginning because you never know what kind of call is going to come in.
Yeah, because it can be random. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. But everyone that worked there, it was a very small company. And all the counselors that worked there were either AFCs, CFPs, or something similar.
Okay. So were you working part-time at that point, or were you able to get that to a full-time position?
I worked there part-time. I have 2 small boys. And so at the time, my oldest was just still a baby. So it was very helpful being able to work virtually part-time from home.
And then, so you came to XYPN 15 in Charlotte. So that was our first conference, which was a ton of fun. And I'm assuming that's where you met Sophia and sort of made that connection.
Yes. So I found out about the conference, and back then I knew that I probably didn't want to start my own firm, but I figured, here is a group of financial planners that are working virtually. If anything, I can pick their brains, gain some clarity towards how I could get a role as a virtual paraplanner. So I attended the conference, and it was so much fun. It was a really great conference, and I met a lot of people, including Sophia Berra. And I ended up walking away from the conference with my first contracting job as a virtual paraplanner with another advisor, not with Sophia at that time.
Oh, okay. So you're working with another advisor. How many hours a week were you looking at then?
With them, it was only about 10 hours or so a week. So it really wasn't that much. But I was still working the call center as well. So now I had the call center and I had one advisor that I was working as a contractor for. And then a few months later, Sophia brought me on as a virtual paraplanner with her as well.
So did you continue to work for the other advisor as well as Gen Y Planning, or did you only work with one at that point?
So back then I worked for multiple. So I worked for Sophia as well as this other advisor and the call center. So I was working all three of those jobs for a while.
So a lot of advisors, and we advocate for this quite heavily, that, your first hire doesn't have to be full-time, right? And it's a huge advantage as you're growing your practice. But on the flip side is someone who is piecing together a career, which is fine, but I think it can add an extra layer of stress. So I guess, how did you manage the three different competing priorities? Because, no one wins. Sometimes it feels like, because you sort of have to get it all done. So I guess, how did you manage, scheduling and prioritization of work with these three different bosses, essentially?
Sure. Time blocking really helped, making sure that each advisor and the call center all had their specific time. And while working as a contractor, you can work the hours that you would like as long as you fulfill, the quota or the number of hours requested each week. So, I could work early mornings, during breaks or during nap times, and late in the evenings as well for the two different advisors. So that helped a lot as well. And, at that time, I wasn't working that many hours for either. So the first advisor, I was still working about 10 hours a week for. And in the beginning, I was really only working, 10 hours or so a week for Sophia.
And then did you have set hours with the call center, or was that sort of whenever you wanted to work, you could work?
Those were set hours. And the neat thing with the call center was that, so basically I had set office hours with the call center, and I just had to be at my desk and ready to answer a call at any time. But we really only received about one call an hour. And so as long as I was, there ready to take a phone call and do that work, I was still able to do some other financial planning work for the other advisors while I waited in between calls. And the call center knew about my other work and what I was doing on the side, and they were fine with that as well.
That is awesome. I mean, in a way, it's double dipping, but in a good way, that, you're able to sit there and get work done, but you're available, because that's what they were paying you for. One, for your expertise, but two, just for you to be available, which is huge. So that's awesome. That's a good way to double up and actually, I'm assuming, make significantly more money. So
yeah, it was a really great experience. And so, I really loved working for all three of them. Sophia and I probably connected the most, I would say. I really believe in her mission, and I think she's fantastic, and the firm that she is running is just really great. And so around this time, I gave birth to my second baby. And so I went on a maternity leave from all three jobs. And when it was time to come back from maternity leave, Sophia and I had talked, and I decided, that I really connected with her the most, and she bumped up my hours, and I decided to start working for solely Sophia.
Just to focus there, were you still a contractor at that time?
Yes, at that time, I was still a contractor.
So how did you price your services? Did y'all just sort of come up with an hourly rate? Did you do some research to try to figure out how much you should be making? I guess for the benefit of folks that are looking at virtual paraplanner positions, how should they be thinking about pricing?
Man, pricing is a very difficult topic because working as a virtual paraplanner is still fairly new. And so, to be honest, when I started with that very first advisor, we discussed a rate while we were at the conference, and I really had nothing to compare it to. I didn't know any other virtual paraplanners at the time. And so we just agreed on a rate that I felt comfortable with and that he felt comfortable with, and moved forward. And then I sort of used that rate as a starting point when I'm talking with other advisors.
So did you, request a certain number of hours, sort of like a retainer where, I will get paid 10 hours a week, even if I'm working 8, or did you just get paid truly hourly?
So I was paid truly hourly, but I do know of other virtual paraplanners that have now put a minimum in place. So a 5-hour minimum, for example, in their contracts. And so I think that's becoming more and more common.
Yeah, I would agree that that's a good way to go, only because as the person that hires independent contractors, at times it's helpful to know that I've already paid for the hours, and that I might as well give you enough to do to fill the time, as opposed to be oh, is this a $30 an hour task. I don't know. It says like, hey, I'm paying you for 10 hours. I might as well use the time. And I think it helps advisors and employers actually outsource more work and keep you busy just because you've already committed to it.
I think so too. I think that's a very fair statement.
So especially when you were working with two different advisors, how did you manage tasks? Did you just sort of tie into their CRM, or did you have your own that you were pushing tasks to and managing your time and monitoring time and that sort of thing?
I've always used the software that the advisor themselves use because it was the easiest way for them to push tasks over to me. The first advisor that I worked for, I'd say he really didn't give me that many tasks. And it was, he'd give me a pretty general guideline and timeline that he would like a project to be completed, by say next week or so forth. And so I knew that I had, a good week to complete this project, give it back to him with a fair amount of time so we can go over it before he presented it to the clients. With Sophia, I was a lot more integrated in her firm from very early on, helping with prospecting and client onboarding and just a lot of her business tasks that needed a lot of attention. And so the work that she gave me was a lot more, I'd say like daily tasks as opposed to, weekly tasks from the other advisor.
That's an interesting delineation because I've never thought about it this way, but I guess you can either be giving a virtual team member projects, which, are more open-ended and you can do it whenever you want, versus daily tasks, which means you actually have to log on every day and knock stuff out, which I assume advisors can go one direction or the other just in terms of their personality and really the tasks that they're having you do. If you're drafting a financial plan, that's more project-based. If it's, update CRM with prospect information, that's more of a daily thing.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
So I guess the other thing too was Sophia had a virtual paraplanner prior to working with you. So I do wonder as well, like if she had learned some about like better ways to manage and to hand things off through that process. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I imagine this is something that takes some trial and error and learning on behalf of the advisor to actually hand tasks off to someone.
Yes. And I think she did learn from, her past experiences with virtual paraplanners, but I think it also depends on the personality type. We still have the type of relationship where she will give me one set of tasks and processes to learn and master. And then once I'm starting to feel comfortable with that process that she has, then she'll start to give me, a new responsibility and new task to take on. And so that's really how our relationship has blossomed and how I've become so integrated in her firm is, it was really baby steps. And I've been there for a good year and a half now. And so now I am, at the associate planner role and really helping with the financial plans.
So as a contractor, did you set up an entity? Did you have an LLC that you were running the money through or anything like that? Or did you just do it, as a 1099 directly to yourself? I'm just curious the legal side.
Sure. I was a sole proprietor the whole time.
And did you get any special insurance policies or anything like that? Or was that even on your mind at the time?
Nope, not at all.
I don't know if they even have virtual paraplanner policy. I guess you can be covered by the company, but if you're a 1099, I'm not sure that E&O would cover you. As a W-2, it does, but that'd be an interesting question on like what actual protections can you even put in place just in case, just to give yourself some peace of mind.
Right. I think that's a very good question and really something worth exploring. Yeah, that's a great idea to start looking into and, just so I can share that information with others, even though now I am a W-2 employee.
Yeah, because you'll probably forever be the expert on this topic. So, which is always fun. So, okay. So you came back from maternity leave. When was this that you actually just started, focusing solely on Gen Y planning?
Let's see. So I had my youngest August of last year. And so, I took a few months off. And so when I got back that fall, I was solely working for Sophia at that point.
Okay. So, how was that transition? Did you find it a lot easier to only work with one advisor instead of multiple, or did you kind of miss the variety of tasks from working with different advisors?
I personally loved it. I was so excited that I was able to give all of my attention to one advisor whom, I love and respect. And it's really become a mentorship relationship with her, and I wanted to learn everything I could from her. And so for me, it was a really great move. And I am, still so grateful to be working for her and learning from her. So I love working for just one advisor.
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine people would go one direction or the other, right? That like maybe they love that variety, but I can also imagine that could get frustrating over time because you're even inside of a big firm when you're working as the associate advisor for multiple advisors. I think that can be tough as well because the expectations of each advisor can be different and the way they want you to display your insurance analysis is different depending on who you're talking to or who you're working with. And so that can be a little challenging.
Right. And, I would say that it was very interesting working for very different advisors. On the one hand, I was working for more of a wealth management firm dealing mostly with baby boomers. And then on the other side, I was working with Gen Y Planning that works with millennials in a very different sort of client type. And so I got to experience very different, styles and clients and financial planning recommendations. They were very different. But I really felt like I aligned very well with Gen Y Planning. And so while I'm grateful for the experience to work with different advisors, I'm also very happy just working with the one.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Do you mind sharing sort of from when you started out through your contracting process, sort of how your pricing went in terms of did it go up as you got more experience or did it go down as you got more hours with a single advisor?
Let's see. I want to make sure I answer your question well if I understand it. So I started out really with the same price for both advisors. Sophia and I started a kind of like a trial run for the first 30 days. And once we had passed that, my hourly rate did go up a bit with her. And then, we have a very open line of communication. And so we're able to have that conversation. And as responsibilities grow, talk about increasing fees as well.
Okay. That makes sense. So last fall, so about a year ago, you transitioned to just working for Sophia, sounds like maybe 20 hours a week and then this past April, you went full-time, it sounds like, or went W-2. Does that mean full-time?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So full-time W-2.
Okay. So it took about 6 months to go from 20 to 40 hours. And again, like I'm thinking about this in terms of advisors out there that are thinking about hiring a virtual paraplanner. I know we sort of start thinking like, okay, well, I need someone 5 to 10 hours a week. And then that quickly turns to 20. And I think it honestly quickly goes to 40 as you're able to hand off tasks and responsibilities. Cause there's certainly, there's so much to be that you can hand off to a paraplanner. So I guess talk me through sort of the transit or the different tasks that you started with. So, 30, 60, 90 days in, like what type of work were you doing? And then how has that transformed over time to sort of what role you're playing today and the types of tasks and projects you're in charge of now?
Sure. So in the beginning, I started off with just very basic tasks to get to know the firm itself and the way that they process things. So I started off with prospecting. We have an application process where prospects can come in and I would decide if they were a good fit or if we should refer them out to another advisor. And I started there and then went into sitting in on client meetings and taking notes, which was very helpful. I really enjoyed that. And that quickly moved into actually helping prep the plans. So being able to sit in on the client meetings and take notes really helped give some context to, the financial plan itself and helped me create those. And so I started creating the financial plans while collaborating with Sophia and passing them off to her for review. And since then, I've become, I guess, a lot more client facing. I interact a lot more with the clients now. I email them directly to set up calls and to collect data for check-in meetings. I'll have separate one-on-one calls with some of the clients to go over cash flow and budgeting, because that's something that I personally really enjoy. So it's really just continued to grow. And I would say I've become more and more client facing as our relationship continues.
So this is really interesting because, you said the first task you took on was some of the prospect work, which is, I'm suspecting most advisors' minds, like the last thing someone new is going to do. Do you think that was just sort of an element of Sophia's marketing and that she's bringing in a lot of folks that may not be a good fit? Or that was just she saw a skill set that you had there that to be able to handle that. Like that's a very trusting thing to hand off to someone, I would think.
Probably a combination. Sophia does get a lot of applicants each month. And so I think in her mind, it was a very time-consuming task. I wouldn't do the prospect calls or anything. That is still Sophia's job to actually, sell her services and have that conversation with the prospects. But as far as, deciding if they were even a good fit to have that initial prospecting call, that was one of my first tasks.
That's awesome. Good for y'all. That, like you said, that's just something that like I could imagine, and maybe I'm just projecting because that's something for me that I thought would be impossible to hand off. I waited too long to hand off some of that type of responsibility at XYPN. But so you said you also sat in on client meetings. So most of her work, I believe, is done virtually. So how did you actually attend meetings, and did the client know you were there early on?
Yeah. So our client calls are done mostly through Zoom, through video chats. And so we just set up a, video conference chat. Sometimes even the couples will be away from one another. So there could be up to 4 of us on the video call. And yeah, Sophia did email out all of her clients as soon as I started taking on more tasks. And we realized, that it would make the most sense for me to start being client facing. She let them know ahead of time that I would be joining. And really, for the most part, I was a fly on the wall, just taking notes, being able to look up quick answers to questions that the clients might have so that they can continue on with their meeting without having to, stop and look something up quickly. So I have found it extremely beneficial, especially to my growth as a financial planner, being able to, watch and see how Sophia does what she does, because she is really, really fantastic.
Yeah, it's probably the best. I don't think probably yet. I'll just say it is the best learning that you can get as a newer advisor is just sitting in meetings and watching how clients react, because they do not react how they do in the case studies that CFP school gives us. They're not like, oh, I should cut my spending by $400 a month and save more money into my Roth IRA. That's a fantastic recommendation. If only they were that, if it was that easy. So it's awesome that you were able to just sort of tie in electronically. I mean, and so I know when we do some of our training with new team members at XY, they'll just sort of listen into calls and, the other party doesn't even know they're there necessarily, and they're just sort of absorbing. But I guess with a platform like Zoom, there's probably actually no way to hide the fact that you're there because your name is going to pop up on the attendee list. So a good way to do it. And then you said that you have sort of transitioned into actually doing more client-facing work and taking on some of those, the more debt management and cash flow type work. Were you doing that as an independent contractor, or did that not start until you were W-2 and I'm assuming an IAR of Gen Y planning?
So it did not start until fairly recently when I was a W-2 employee. But because it's just budgeting and very basic cash flow needs, I have not registered yet as an IAR.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Yeah. And that's always a tough question, right? It's like, and for folks that are starting paraplanning businesses, just to be safe, we recommend that they get an RIA, especially if they're already an XYPN member and started getting their own firm up and running just to use their RIA. It's an expensive thing to do, so I know it's painful, but it remains to be seen. I'm not aware of too many people that have had pushback from regulators on it, but we've had some. Once they start crossing lines, right? Like once they're like, oh, well, I think you should reallocate your 401k. And it's like, all right, but need to get registered.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. We've spoken with our compliance guy and, as long as I am very cautious not to even approach the line of investments, like I said, they're really just budgeting calls and, going through the numbers and techniques for budgeting, then he said that it's fine as far as he is concerned to do these, one-on-one calls.
So is there a reason to not register? Oh, I guess if you can't use the CFP just yet, like you'd have to take the 65, I guess. Like, are you just avoiding that, or is there another reason to not register?
So I have recently done the Series 65, so that is all set to go. But in all honesty, we are about 5 months from moving again, and we have no idea where we are going.
Gotcha.
So I think we're just sort of waiting to find out where I go next and actually get settled before we move forward.
That is fair. That's a great point, that you're going to be re-registering in a new state in 5 months. Because are you still in Oklahoma?
Yes, I am.
All right. Well, do you have like the top 3 wish list on where you're going, or you truly have no idea at this point?
I mean, we have dreams, but it really depends on what the Air Force needs and wants in about 5 months.
Because it could change 4 times between now and then.
Yes. So I'm really trying not to get my hopes up for anything. So as far as I'm concerned right now, I really have no idea.
Somewhere with internet. That is the,
Yes.
that is the goal. Rapid City, South Dakota, or a beach somewhere, and anywhere in between.
Which is really so incredible about working virtually. You know, for the first time in my journey towards the CFP, I am no longer concerned about where I'll be working as soon as we move in 5 months. You know, I feel so comfortable, confident with what I'm doing as a virtual paraplanner and working with Gen Y Planning that, you know, I am so at ease with the thought of moving as far as the career goes.
No, that makes perfect sense. And like I said, as the military spouses, it's a struggle. I mean, you know, and I think there are a lot of folks that end up being, you know, like getting into nursing or a career like that that's just so needed everywhere that like it's a little easier to plug in, but not everybody wants to be a nurse, you know, like you want to be a financial planner and you can do that. And that's what I love about the profession of financial planning, and in particular, sort of where the profession is headed, is that it is, you know, these opportunities weren't even easily available in 2013, much less 5 or 10 years before that. This has just sort of recently become a thing. And it's really exciting to see because we can keep great talent like yourself in the profession without losing them simply because there weren't any jobs in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma.
Exactly. And, you know, I think it really is a game changer in financial planning because suddenly, you know, if someone wants to, you know, stay home and have a family, then it's okay. You know, you can still work virtually, you know, maybe fewer hours, but work virtually with another firm. Career changers can have hopefully an easier transition into financial planning because, you know, they can dip their toes in financial planning by working as a virtual paraplanner on the side of their current career instead of, you know, stopping entirely to take a chance on financial planning. So it really opens up the door to so many new people, you know, wanting to make the transition.
So given that you've gone full time now, you're starting to do client facing work, you'll have the CFP here before too long. Is your plan to become a client facing sort of lead advisor? And do y'all sort of have a career path for that? Or do you enjoy more of the back office sort of support role? I guess, what do you see as your future role there at Gen Y Planning?
Yes, I would say that I do see myself eventually becoming a lead planner within Gen Y Planning. I think that is the ultimate goal.
Do you sort of have, or have y'all talked about a timeline for that? I mean, what it takes for you to go from where you are to that point?
You know, we haven't talked specific timelines. We have the conversation very often. You know, like I said, we have a very open line of communication, and Sophia is very open to helping me pursue this career and expand within Gen Y Planning. But, you know, so much of it right now, in my mind at least, is depending on where we move next and what that might look like.
Yeah, that's a great point. Again, hopefully they have fast internet. That's the,
yes.
That's the whole goal.
I mean, we were in Japan before this, and that would have been a very difficult difference in time. So, you know, things like that. I really have no idea where we will be, but we will just play it by ear and figure it out. And hopefully in the next 5 months or so, have some more clarity.
Yeah, you can have Gen Y Planning Japan, I guess.
There you go.
Working with all the international clients. That's fantastic. So transitioning just a little bit, you started the platform or the website Simply Paraplanner. So can you give me sort of an overview of what that website is and just where the idea came from?
Sure. So it is a job board website. Like I said, it connects financial planners with virtual paraplanners across the country. And it really started after coming back from XYPN 15. And, you know, while I was there, I met so many advisors that were interested in hiring virtually. You know, it was such a common question that came up during the conference was, how do I hire virtually? Where do I find a virtual paraplanner? And the simple answer was always word of mouth. And then here I was knowing that I'm sure I'm not the only one looking for virtual work as a paraplanner. You know, I have quite a community of military spouses pursuing this career as well. And I know that there are others out there. So there has to be an easier way for these two parties to find each other and connect. So that's when I decided to start Simply Paraplanner.
So when did you start the website?
Probably the week that I got back from XYPN 15.
That's awesome.
I quickly figured out how to make a website, and, it was a pretty awful website back then. I didn't have great website design skills. But once I got my 50 members signed up on the website, I decided that I could finally do a little makeover. And so it is much better looking now.
50 members. So I guess one, is that number of advisors or virtual paraplanners looking for work, or is that sort of all in? I guess where is the website today in terms of usage?
Sure. So just to give some, background, it is a membership only website, which means that you must sign up and be approved to access information on the website, such as job listings and resumes. And it's set up this way because it really helps prevent spam and ensure that the job postings and candidates on the website are actually relevant to financial planning.
That's a good point.
Yes. So there are currently 2 membership levels. There is the general membership called the basic membership, and then there is the premium advisor membership. So currently we have over 300 members signed up on the website, which is a combination of both paraplanners and advisors. I would say that is heavily weighted on the paraplanner side. And of those members, there are 69 resumes currently posted. So basic members, when you come on and register as a member, you have the ability to browse current job listings, browse resumes, apply to jobs, and actually post a resume. And then you can, for advisors, they can upgrade to the advisor membership, which gives them access to post a job opening, view full resumes, and also contact the paraplanners directly.
300 members. That is awesome.
Yes, I'm very excited about it.
People ask me all the time, they're like, how do I find how do you find virtual paraplanners for one? And I'm just like, oh my gosh, there have to be so many out there, but this is sort of the first group of consolidated group. You can sort of post on the internet or whatnot, but this is actually a consolidated group of advisors that are looking for work. So tell me about the sort of your typical paraplanner. Are they, sort of the position you were in of they're in a location that just doesn't have jobs nearby and they're sort of breaking into the industry? Do you have, or are there a lot of sort of newer firm owners, like an XYPN member that's looking for additional work? I guess what's your typical makeup of the paraplanners looking for positions?
So we have a wide variety of paraplanners on the website, which I find very interesting. When I started the website, I really thought that people that signed up on the website would probably be in a situation similar to my own. But what I have found is that we have, paraplanners that range from very entry level, pursuing their CFP courses right now. They haven't sat for the exam yet, all the way up to CFPs that either, like you said, have their own firms and are doing this as a side hustle, or we have really career virtual paraplanners, that are doing this for a living. They are CFPs and have, turned this into their job.
Yeah, I think there's an assumption with a virtual paraplanner, like, oh, I'm going to get someone that's 22, hasn't passed a CFP. And there are some folks like that. And there are great positions that would be wonderful for them as well. You're not necessarily going to, no offense to the 22-year-olds, but when I was 22, I could not have stepped into the position that you're doing, right? Like it takes experience and some life experience and getting the CFP and that sort of thing. But there are a lot of experienced paraplanners out there that want to work virtually, which sounds like you've pulled together quite a few of them that are actually, some of them you said are even career paraplanners, which we don't hear a lot about. So is that a decent percentage, or is it pretty evenly split amongst these sort of different groups of paraplanners?
I think it's pretty evenly split. So about a third of our members are CFPs. A third of them, are kind of in my position. They're candidates for the CFP, still working towards the experience requirement. And then the last third are more entry level, just starting out their journey into financial planning.
Okay. And then how are you finding these folks? Has it been mostly word of mouth, or are you doing any active marketing to try to pull folks in?
So I have actually done no advertising up until now. So really it's just been through word of mouth, Google searches, and people just looking. They search the term virtual paraplanner and we're the first thing that comes up.
That's a good point. Now, I want to clarify. You said up until now, you did not pay to be on XYPN Radio. So this is not paid advertising. This is free advertising. So just to clarify, I don't want anybody getting the wrong idea. No one pays for guest slots. So, but that's awesome. I mean, so 2015, so it's been 2 years since our first conference. So in less than 2 years, you've been able to reach that many folks. And it is an exciting idea, especially, again, it reaches a different demographic that really want to be in financial planning, but don't have either aren't in the ideal location. Because I get emails from people all the time. They're like, I'm in this like small town, my significant other or partner has a job here. We're not going to move. Like, what are the options that are out there? And this is an example. Do you see that there are, what's the best way to ask this? Are there enough jobs out there? Like, how many actual job postings are you seeing on a monthly, quarterly basis at this point looking for virtual paraplanners?
So we're definitely more heavily concentrated on the paraplanner side.
Sure.
There are currently 4 jobs active on the website. And because we have so many paraplanners looking for work, the job listings that are on the website, they average about 15 to 25 applicants per job. Whoa. And you have to keep in mind that, these are all very qualified and financial planning specific candidates that apply to these jobs.
It cracks me up because I'll have advisors and they're like, oh, I'm looking for a younger planner. Like, how do you find one? It's like they're walking around the woods looking for an elk, where do they live? And it's like, oh my God, to get 15 to 25 applicants, according to our business Bible scaling up, you need 20 qualified applicants to find A players, and so like 20 people that are really good fits. And that's how you find the A player that is both skill set, but also a cultural fit, which is not, consistent across companies. So you have to find that right personality. And you've actually been able to do that. I don't know of any financial planner that, other than a very select few, that are able to post jobs and get 20 plus applications. That's an insane number of qualified applicants.
Yes. It's a really exciting time right now, I think, where so many people are ready and anxious and excited about doing this virtually and, outsourcing their unique skill set to others. So like we've talked about before, they're no longer just entry-level paraplanners. These are very skilled and qualified individuals that are looking to, supplement either their current jobs or even, find the perfect financial planning firm that will allow them to work from home.
So are you making any recommendations in terms of pricing or structure and that sort of thing? Like, are you giving some recommendations to the paraplanners on how to structure it?
So currently there's nothing really in place right now for them. I do answer questions very regularly about how to structure themselves and what that looks like. But the next service or project that I'm working on for Simply Paraplanner is to create something called the Paraplanner Portal. And basically, this is going to serve to answer the questions that I field very regularly, such as, do I need a contract in place with my advisor? How do I track hours or set up time logs? What does basic invoicing and bookkeeping look like? So basically, all of these questions that, I find myself answering all the time, we're going to set up a Paraplanner portal, which will have getting started guides, sample contracts, invoices, time logs, all with accompanying tutorial videos so I can show you how I actually use them. There'll be lists of, recommended technology, so lots of resources for paraplanners that are interested in getting started.
That is fantastic. I'm excited to see that because I think, again, it's been sort of this black box of, I don't know what to charge. I don't know what contract to use. Do I need an RIA? And all of these pieces, which, in many ways, that's where XYPlanning Network came out of, where all those same questions, it was just about starting a firm, and your questions are how to be a virtual paraplanner, which is a fantastic opportunity.
Yes, exactly. So if anyone is interested in receiving updates or really being the first to know when the Paraplanner portal launches, we do have a wait list set up, simplyparaplanner.com/waitlist. And that is where you will receive all of the latest updates.
All right. And we'll link to that in the show notes as well. For paraplanners or folks that are thinking about this, can you give me a range or sort of an average of what the job postings are paying? Are they actually listing like $25 an hour, $50 an hour, whatever the number is in the in the actual job postings? Do you have a feel for sort of what pay is these days for virtual paraplanners?
So as I mentioned, it's such a difficult topic, because it is still so new. And actually none of the job listings that have come through Simply Paraplanner have even had an hourly rate on them, because it really depends on the candidate that they end up choosing and what that experience looks like. I mean, I can give some, ranges.
Yeah, that'd be helpful, just because I don't even know like what folks are charging these days.
Sure. So just to reiterate, these are not concrete numbers, and it's really going to depend on you and where you fall as far as the experience spectrum goes and how much you decide to charge. But I would say, average for an entry-level position can be anywhere from $15 to $25 an hour. As you gain a little more experience, maybe pass the CFP exam, you've worked as a virtual paraplanner, then it will start to go up from there, $25 to $35 or $40 an hour. If you want a CFP with a lot of virtual paraplanning experience that can just come in your firm and, just start plugging away, then it's going to be, upwards of 40, 50, even 75 plus an hour.
That's helpful. I mean, that is a big range. I mean, it starts at 15 and goes up to 75. So this has been, I think, part of the struggle, right? Is like, how much do I charge? How much should I pay? Because, you don't want to pay so little that someone, because if you get someone for 5 hours a week at $15 an hour, like it's kind of hard to keep someone bought in when they're making, $75 a week. Like it's just such a tough number. It's such a small number that they're going to keep looking for work. And when they find something that pays more meaningful wages, because even if they work full time at $15 an hour, I mean, that's $30,000 a year, which is it's not anything that, I mean, it is more than a lot of people make, but in financial services, that's a really low number. Most salaried entry level is what, 40 to 45,000 would be my guess. So, and you can't work 1,000 hours or 2,000 hours probably as a paraplanner. You're probably legitimately 1,000, 1,500 hours productive. So I'm doing the math. That would be 1,500. I mean, so that's $30 an hour is 45,000 if you're working 1,500 hours. So that's good to know. I suspect, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I suspect the market will start to get a little more streamlined as we have more of them, right? As more advisors are hiring more virtual paraplanners and there's more conversation around this topic.
Exactly. It is still so new, and we're still figuring what this looks like, and what the pay, how to even value yourself, and how to charge accordingly. And it's difficult, because as a contractor, you're not getting benefits, you don't have set hours each week. We talked about maybe implementing a minimum hourly amount, but otherwise, $15 an hour is extremely low. But for some people, if they're a career changer, for example, and they have a day job and they're trying to get into the financial planning world, they may be willing to take on a lower paying position to hopefully quickly work their way up.
Yeah, I'll be the one to say it. Do not pay your paraplanner $15 an hour. That's just absurd.
Thank you.
I'm just going to go in there. I would say, and I'm just spitballing, but low end has got to be 30 an hour, I would say is probably fair. And I think entry level 30 an hour, 25 to 30 an hour should be bare minimum for an entry level, and it should go up from there. So if you are trying to hire someone at $15 an hour, please don't. Like that. I think it's, in many ways, I do think I'm a free market guy, so I probably shouldn't say this. It's a little bit taking advantage of the situation, but you will lose your person.
Yes.
Right? As an employer, you will lose anyone that you hire at $15 an hour. And honestly, turnover is the hardest thing inside of a firm. So you want to keep your people around and you want to keep them long enough. Because if you're getting someone part-time, you're either getting someone that wants to ramp up inside your firm very quickly, or they're going to end up as sort of this career paraplanner position. Like we had Jennifer Pritchard on the show earlier on, and she's working for 4 advisors, and that's her full-time job. Now she does want to move up into more of an advisory role, but it's tough because you got to drop one to move up, right? So you have to slowly drop your contracts. So anyway, pay fair wages. Come on. Anyway, that's good to know that it's still a struggle and that it is a wide range. So And honestly, I think you can have some influence here in helping educate the paraplanners on what they are worth, but also the advisors on like, hey, let's do the math. It sounds great to have 5 hours a week at $15 an hour, but like, let's do the math on what that person is making. And is that really how you want to handle this?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely an ongoing struggle. Yeah.
You're so nice. So, all right. So the future of Simply Paraplanner, it sounds like, is to become more of a resource center. Do you see this as like a monthly membership that folks will pay for, or is this going to be sort of a one-time thing or free? Like, how are you envisioning you making money? Because you're providing a lot of awesome value.
Yes. So my vision for the Paraplanner portal is to become a membership only service so that we can continue to add videos, add tutorials, add various resources as they become available. So basically just a center that is going to continue to grow and where paraplanners can continue to pull information from, and really just a place, to have an exclusive community for paraplanners where they can congregate and help one another out and, form mastermind groups and feed off of one another and really turn virtual paraplanning into something big and, exciting and something more than, I don't know. I would love virtual paraplanning to become more common and more accessible to others. And so that is really the primary goal of this.
I love it. I really do. I think it's so critical, especially as, we have tried our hardest to promote the concept of that you can work virtually, that, Gen Y planning doesn't have to be this like anomaly, right? Like that business model can be more, industry wide, and that's possible. But part of that too is like, all right, well, then you can hire virtually. And again, people have different situations where they can't move and they can't take a full-time job inside of a specific city. And we don't want to lose that talent. I think it's part of why we lose a lot of talent. You mentioned earlier being able to work from home. Like I do think we lose a lot of very talented female advisors because of the decision to have children and they want to be able to work from home for a period of time. And we've just sort of assumed like, oh, that's just not doable. And it's like, no, it absolutely is, and like there's so much that can be done there to keep very talented people in the profession that I think we have sort of kicked out because they haven't followed the sort of standard streamlined process that we've developed.
Yes, I completely agree. I think it's a really great fit for so many different individuals. So hopefully we can, keep some of those people in financial planning that would have dropped out otherwise, or, people that are having hesitations to joining the financial planning industry, they can actually find a way to make their way into this industry.
As we're sort of coming to a close, I'll ask you the final question. And that is, if there's one piece of advice that you could go back and give your younger self, the one thing you wish you had known then that you've learned, what do you think that one piece of advice would be?
I think if I could go back in time to find myself starting out on this journey, I would remind myself that I have a very unique skill set instead of a limited skill set. That's something that,
framing.
Yeah, I always felt like, I don't have much experience in financial planning, but I've been reminded that instead of limited experience, I have very specialized and focused experience.
So how do you think that would have changed? Do you think it would have changed the type of positions that you took on or how you approached interviews? Like what effect do you think that would have had on you?
I think it would have really helped with my confidence level, and I think, yeah, absolutely going into interviews and, trying to find my role in financial planning. I feel like it really would have helped to have that extra confidence boost to be able to sell myself to others.
Well, Alex, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And this is super exciting to learn about because I think this is a whole area that, one, I think a lot of advisors aren't even aware exist. And you've really been at the center of helping to promote this concept of virtual paraplanning and being able to connect paraplanners with each other and all of that. So I'm super excited and very appreciative for you taking the time to come onto the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.